that we see across the Sahel and that we will see across the Middle East if things don't get reversed. Now, I'm not here to make a pitch for more funding for humanitarian assistance and recovery, which will be very costly in many parts already. I'm asking for less wars. I'm asking for military support in de-escalation strategies. And my asks are fivefold again. They're very concrete. It's starting with keep the moral high ground. What I'm missing nowadays is the focus on preserving life and the focus on values and principles also among the ranks. What we see are potential war crimes at scale in almost all the large conflicts that are active today. What they do is they don't only dehumanize societies, they dehumanize the military, because we are seeing military soldiers confronted with things they have to do that they cannot possibly recover from for a long time. The consequences for entire people will be disastrous. So we have to bring back the rules of war, we have to bring back discipline, and we have to bring back knowledge that these things are not permitted under any circumstances. Secondly, I'm asking you to uphold the rules of war because they are not ambitious treaties. They are the minimal standards that need to be respected at all times. It's really the basic minimums. Don't make them sound complicated. It's not. It's really the basics that have been enshrined in humanity for thousands of years. And it's not complicated to respect the rules of war if you really want to. But they are also the basis for maintaining the necessary trust and pathway back for peace. Because what we see now is that the absence of trust is becoming, and the fact that everything is debased, is becoming the biggest obstacle to negotiating lasting ceasefires. Now, third ask, and this one is important, make sure that you always maintain human control over the use of weapons. The combination of drones and AI leading to autonomous weapons turning against civilians has the potential that we see from nuclear disasters in terms of non-discrimination and non-distinction. Fourth, we are not criticizing investments in defense. That's your national sovereign decision. But you have to internalize the costs for humanitarian consequences of war, because as soon as a war starts, people die. Your own people are subject to humanitarian consequences because your health system may come under attack. And once you budget these costs into your defense budgets, you will be more motivated maybe to de-escalate or to prevent the military escalation in the first place. And fifth, make compliance with the rules of war in times where wars are spreading a political priority, because the law in itself doesn't carry weight. It's only forceful if the governments stand behind them, budget for their implementation, and ensure and follow up on whether things are done the right way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President. I'll hand over now to the Director General.
Thank you very much. David. David has assured me that you are not a hostile audience, so I won't get questions like, you stole my girlfriend in 1989. Would you confirm that? I'm very pleased to be here to talk about strategic stability. Main threats of strategic stability today come from a combination of geopolitical rivalry, technological disruption, and weakening international norms. These threats increase the risk of miscalculation, escalation, and major conflict. Just a word on paranoia and its relationship to strategic stability. It is clearly a threat to strategic stability in various ways. Firstly, we tend to draw equivalence between very dissimilar phenomena. For example, there is a case some have argued that the situation in the Straits of Malacca is akin to what has happened to the Straits of Hormuz. They are very dissimilar in very many ways. The only thing that's similar is that they're internationally important and strategic waterways. Secondly, I always say this to friends from both China as well as the United States, that the capacity for mischief making of one is greatly overrated by the other. Thirdly, unfortunately, paranoia pays. So we see occasionally analysts tend to be alarmists because this is how you get eyeballs. What are the causes of these threats? Obviously, major power competition is one. Secondly is nuclear modernization as well as the arms race. Thirdly, cyber warfare, which target power grids, communications networks, financial systems, as well as military command and control infrastructure. And a major concern is that cyber operations could be misinterpreted during crises and trigger escalation. Artificial intelligence and autonomous systems are another cause of threats. Space militarization is emerging as one, especially since modern militaries depend heavily on satellites for navigation, intelligence, communications, as well as early warning systems. Regional conflicts with global implications, what's happening in the Middle East, is clearly an example of this. Next, we have information warfare as well as disinformation. Economic fragmentation and sanctions warfare is one of them, and these includes phenomena such as the weaponization of single points of failure. So we see this in the context of maritime trade routes. We see this in the context of rare earths as well as advanced technology. The weakening of international institutions and norms is another reason why the threats to strategic stability has increased. Terrorism and non-state actors is one of them, as well as climate change and resource pressures. So clearly, today's strategic environment is often described as more complex than the Cold War because instability now emerges from multiple interconnected domains rather than from nuclear deterrence alone. How do we address this? Firstly, we have to strengthen communication channels. And I just want to point out one fact, that strategic stability depends on strategic trust. But what do we mean by strategic trust? Frankly, in my book, I trust everyone. I trust everyone. I trust everyone to act in their own interests. So the key to addressing these kind of situations is to have a clear understanding of how they define their strategic interests. So you have to have communications in order to understand this. Secondly, we must continue efforts to strengthen arms control as well as confidence building. I think we all know that we have to manage emerging technologies, especially artificial intelligence. We have to reduce escalation risks in regional conflicts. And again, what has happened in the Straits of Hormuz has demonstrated this very, very clearly as well. We have to build resilient societies, preserve deterrence while avoid provocation, continue to support middle power diplomacy, improve global governance, as well as to recognize that failure to manage these can worsen geopolitical competition. So stronger international coordination reduces systemic risks. As a result, strategic stability depends as much as managing uncertainty and interdependence as well as on traditional military deterrence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director General. And I'm going to pass over now to Major General Meng. For your information, he's going to be delivering his remarks in Mandarin, so please put on the headphones if you need to. Major General, thank you.
各位朋友、各位同事，非常荣幸参加今天的这个平行会议。众所周知香格里拉对话会 为地区国家提供了沟通交流平台。利用这个平台，各国参会代表通过坦诚对话，增进了解，增加互信，共同致力于推动地区稳定繁荣。今天上午美国国防部的部长赫格塞斯在第一场全体大会上做了演讲，我是全程聆听了他的讲话。我注意到赫格塞斯在演讲中提到了前不久中美两国元首的北京会晤以及达成的共识。会后演讲之后也进行了现场的互动交流。所以在正式发言之前我想利用这个机会对赫格塞斯的演讲做一个简短的回应。从上午会议现场的提问和反应当中，我感受到前不久中美两国元首的会晤在这次相会上引起的关注程度是非常高的。这进一步说明中美关系的稳定不仅有利于两国人民，更有利于地区稳定和世界和平。这一次两国元首会晤的最重要的政治共识就是同意构建中美建设性战略稳定关系。习近平主席在会晤特朗普时明确指出，建设性战略稳定应该是合作为主的积极稳定，应该是竞争有度的良性稳定，应该是分歧可控的常态稳定，应该是和平可期的持久稳定，为未来3年乃至更长时间的中美关系做出战略指引。我们也期待中美两国相向而行，把两国元首共识落实落地，推动两军关系沿着健康、稳定、可持续的方向发展。这是我对上午赫格塞斯的演讲做一个简短的回应。下面围绕我们这个平行会议的主题，我做一个发言。发言的题目是为维护全球战略稳定注入正能量。国际学界对战略稳定概念有不同理解。在我看来，它已经从早期的核恐怖平衡演变为今天涵盖国际秩序、军控体系及前沿科技的综合安全概念。但是不管怎么变，战略稳定始终是各国安全保障的基石。然而当前正面临前所未有的挑战。我认为主要来自4个方面：一是霸权主义冲击地区安全，个别国家大搞强权政治，谋求绝对战略优势，挑动阵营对抗，加剧国际和地区军备竞赛，地区冲突频发；二是全球核冲突风险上升。
The risk of global nuclear conflict is rising. In recent conflicts, parties have sent nuclear deterrence signals. In the past, the Palestine-Israel conflict, an Israel cabinet minister shockingly suggested using nuclear weapons in Gaza. This shows such threat of nuclear war is not remote. Third, the international arms control, disarmament, and non-proliferation regimes have been severely eroded. A series of nuclear arms control guardrails have collapsed. The 2 countries with the largest nuclear arsenals have entered a vacuum with no treaties, no verification, and no dialogue. Under the AUKUS Pact, Australia is developing nuclear-powered submarines. Japan is pushing to revise its pacifist constitution and the 3 non-nuclear principles, and seeking to have allies deploy nuclear weapons on its soil. The risk of nuclear proliferation is increasing. At the same time, the militarization of emerging domains such as outer space, cyberspace, and AI is accelerating. The militarization of emerging technologies is challenging traditional rules of engagement and ethics of war, increasing the risk of losing control. Fourth, global governance is in serious disorder. The global governance system suffers from dysfunction, disorder, and damaged credibility. Multilateral mechanisms are heavily disrupted by bullying tactics, plunging the world into the risk of weakened rules. These risks are intertwined and make the strategic stability extremely fragile. Faced with this situation, Chinese President Xi Jinping proposed the Global Security Initiative and the Global Governance Initiative, advocating a vision of common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security and emphasizing multilateralism and international rule of law, providing Chinese wisdom. I believe that all countries, especially major powers, should earnestly practice the vision of a community with shared future for mankind and shoulder their due responsibility for strategic stability. This year, first, we must firmly defend the post-war international order and consolidate the political foundation. This year marks the 80th anniversary of the opening of the International Military Tribunal for the Far East. This trial nailed crimes of Japanese militarism forever to the pillar of historical shame. laying the important cornerstone for the post-war international order. Yet today, certain forces openly glorify war crimes, promote erroneous views on World War II history, attempt to challenge the verdict of the Tokyo trials, reverse the verdict on aggression, and even taken concrete actions to break free from the post-war peace system. It's a country that has not thoroughly liquidated the toxic legacy of militarism qualified to talk about international defense cooperation. Can it win the trust of the international community, especially Asian countries that it invaded? I deeply doubt it. The lessons of history are not far behind. The world today stands at another crossroads. We must safeguard the achievements of the World War II and the post-war international order. Second, we must vigorously promote inclusive co-governance and build a fair and equitable global security governance system. Strategic stability should not be defined by a handful of countries, but on a broad participation. The current global security governance mechanisms urgently need reform. Developed countries are overrepresented, while developing countries are severely underrepresented. This does not conform to the trend of the times. China advocates the UN reform, adhere to the democratic consultation, enhance the representation and the voice of developing countries, especially African nations, promote the expansion of BRICS and the SCO, support ASEAN's central role in the regional architecture, help Southeast Asian countries play a greater role in regional and international affairs, strengthen the Global South voice, and push for a more fair and equitable global governance system. Third, we must strengthen consensus on arms control and uphold the nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament regimes. In November 2025, China issued a white paper on China's arms control, disarmament, and non-proliferation, systematically elaborating China's views and policies. China proposed that five peace, negotiate and conclude a treaty on mutual non-first use of nuclear weapons, a critical step toward effective reducing strategic risks. The NPT remains the cornerstone of the international nuclear non-proliferation and the disarmament regime. China supports upholding its universality, effectiveness, and authority. The country with the largest nuclear arsenal should fulfill their special responsibility and restart the nuclear disarmament process as soon as possible. Fourth, we must actively manage risks from emerging technologies and prevent a rules vacuum in military domain, allowing the algorithm to hold the power of life and death over human could easily lead to loss of technology control and might even turn the American film The Terminator scenarios into reality. I believe that the future development of AI should shift from technology for good to technology for security at all times. We must ensure that the control of the warfare and the weapons in human hands. China has submitted a position paper regulating AI military application under the UN Convention on the CCW framework, supporting the conclusion of legally binding international instruments when conditions are ripe. Distinguished colleagues, as an ancient Chinese saying goes, a single person lifting a heavy load cannot stand upright. Many people working together can move forward with ease. I hope all countries can join hands, practice true multilateralism, and jointly inject positive energy into global strategic stability. Thank you.
Thank you, Major General. Can we now move on to Lieutenant General Zakaria?
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor to address this august gathering of seasoned statesmen, diplomats, and military professionals from around the globe. I'm grateful to ISSS for affording me this opportunity to elucidate on the growing challenges to strategic stability arising from emerging technologies, multi-domain operations, and the evolving information environment. Ladies and gentlemen, the operationalization of emerging domains alongside the legacy domains have significantly complicated the strategic stability landscape. Rapid advances in artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, cyber capabilities, quantum technologies, and multi-domain operations are transforming military decision-making, command and control structures, and strategic competition, while simultaneously introducing new vulnerabilities, risks of miscalculation, attribution challenges, and unintended escalation. As states, societies, and critical infrastructures become increasingly dependent on interconnected technological ecosystems, the erosion of predictability and compression of decision-making timelines are fundamentally reshaping the nature of interstate conflict and strategic deterrence. Excellencies, the information environment is becoming increasingly fragmented as digital platforms, AI-generated content, and disinformation campaigns erode trust, distort narratives, and compress decision-making timelines. In this evolving landscape, control of information and data integrity has emerged as a critical determinant of strategic stability alongside conventional military balance. Ladies and gentlemen, strategic stability in South Asia remains shaped by nuclear deterrence, conventional asymmetry, enduring political tensions, and unresolved territorial and ideological disputes between India and Pakistan. Despite the complexities of great power contestation, China constitutes a constructive and stabilizing factor, contributing to strategic balance, regional connectivity, and economic cooperation. The May 2025 conflict between India and Pakistan demonstrated Pakistan's effective multi-domain operations, which was enabled by tri-service synergy, integrated use of cyber, electronic warfare, ISR, space-based capabilities, and synergetic information maneuver generating cross-domain effects. Pakistan's resolute response has effectively debunked the notion of space for war in South Asia. Post-conflict dynamics have further constrained the prospects for conventional war. However, continued Indian militarization, coupled with persistent adversarial rhetoric and absence of robust crisis management mechanisms, continue to undermine regional stability. In this evolving environment, South Asia's strategic equilibrium is increasingly contingent upon escalation control and effective crisis communication frameworks. Ladies and gentlemen, navigating the complex challenges of fast transforming geopolitical environment warrants a shift from competition-only postures to cooperative risk management across multiple domains while remaining committed to upholding international norms. Firstly, states must prioritize responsible governance of emerging technologies. Technological innovation cannot be divorced from ethical responsibility and strategic accountability. States should work towards internationally accepted norms regarding the military use of artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, cyber operations, and space technologies. Human oversight must remain central in decisions involving the use of force, especially in systems with strategic implications. Confidence-building measures, transparency mechanisms, and technical dialogues among states are essential to reduce misunderstanding and prevent destabilizing arms races. Secondly, institutionalized crisis management mechanism and strategic communication channels need to be strengthened. As in a world of compressed decision-making timelines, direct communication assumes enhanced relevance. Even during periods of geopolitical rivalry, dialogue must never collapse. History repeatedly demonstrates that strategic stability is preserved not only through deterrence, but through communication as well. Thirdly, nations need to collaborate in codifying norms regarding space testing, prohibitions to attacks on civilian infrastructure, and human oversight requirements for autonomous weapon systems. Norms do not discourage competitiveness, ladies and gentlemen, but they do set boundaries that make deterrence more calculable. International law and multilateral institutions must be adaptive to emerging realities. Technological transformation is outpacing our existing institutional and legal frameworks. Strengthening global cooperation on cyber governance, responsible AI development, space security, digital ethics, and information integrity is imperative to maintaining the geostrategic equilibrium. No country, regardless of its size or technological sophistication, can manage the emerging multi-faced risks alone. The challenges we face are transnational by nature and therefore require collaborative responses. Strategic stability is not only about military capability, it is also about societal endurance. Countries must strengthen cyber resilience, protect critical infrastructure, improve digital digital and technical literacy, and build institutional credibility. Public trust is a strategic asset. Resilient societies are far less vulnerable to external manipulation and internal destabilization through misinformation, polarization, and technological disruption. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at its core, strategic stability is ultimately about responsible statecraft. Technology itself is not inherently destabilizing, but the real challenge lies in how technologies are governed, integrated, and employed. Human judgment, political wisdom, and international cooperation for greater good remain indispensable. We must resist the temptation for greater good. We must resist the temptation to view every technological breakthrough solely through the lens of competition and militarization, rather a function of balance between innovation and responsibility, national security and global stability, strategic competition and collective survival. Let us remember that peace and stability have never been involuntary outcomes of technological progression. They have always depended on political responsibility, strategic restraint, and sustained international engagement. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Lieutenant General. And last but not least, General Eichelsheim.
Yeah, thank you very much. And besides all the elements that my partners already discussed about the threats to our strategic stability, so I will not repeat those, because otherwise we will be going out of this room very sad. But I have to add one, though. And that is, at least from the perspective of the Netherlands, also the Russia's wars of aggression against Ukraine. Because this war is not only a direct assault on the fundamental principles of the international rules-based order, such as international integrity and sovereignty, it's also a direct threat to our free and open way of life. So as a result of the Russia's unprecedented aggression, countless Ukrainians have lost their lives. We have to be very much understanding that those are thousands per day, still, every day. Millions at this moment. Families who have been torn apart, and ordinary civilians who turned into soldiers because they had no other choice but to defend their country. And the consequences of that war are, besides all the other threats that we have just described, still felt around the world. So, from the perspective that we have discussed today, is that the war in Ukraine reminds us that peace, security and stability can never be taken for granted. That's, of course, an open door. But at the same time, new threats, like we discussed, are emerging, and that could undermine the prosperous and secure future that we seek for ourselves and for our future generations. So we have to adapt. And how to manage those threats then in the future? From my perspective, multilateralism, pragmatism, and global thinking. Multilateralism. In the increasingly uncertain world, cooperation considerably increases the resilience and the security of small and middle powers alike. A rules-based international order does not mean a system in which rules are determined by a handful of dominant actors. It must remain an inclusive system grounded in international law, mutual respect, and shared responsibility. And by working together on the basis of shared values and common interests, we strengthen our collective security. And this includes cooperation among countries that uphold the principles enshrined in the UN Charter. But it also requires maintaining constructive dialogue with neighbors and partners, even when our perspectives differ, like our partners already said today. So here in this part of the world, the role of multilateral organizations such as the EU or NATO are at times questioned. And people sometimes wonder how unity can exist alongside such a diversity of views among so many countries. But yet Europe's own history demonstrates precisely why multilateral cooperation matters. Our continent has experienced centuries of conflict, territorial disputes, and 2 devastating world wars. And despite this history, European nations choose cooperation over confrontation because we recognized that our shared values and interests are ultimately stronger than our differences. We have to remind that. We have come up to accept that war or even coercion are not the answer to the disputes on our continent. So we still have our political differences, that is for sure. I still don't speak French, I still don't speak Italian, but we understand each other. And we try to solve those difficulties through compromise and consensus, however difficult that may be. And the second ingredient, as I told, is pragmatism. So the changing security environment sometimes requires us to reassess long-held assumptions and adapt our approach in order to protect what matters most. We see that reflected in the changing security posture of countries here in the region, but also in the significant increase in defense spending across Europe, which was not normal. Pragmatism may also require building partnerships with actors that may once have seemed unlikely partners, based on ideology alone, but more based on realism, shared interests, and common security concerns. A common threat can bring together various countries. And the third element is global thinking. Today's threats, as we all know, emerge in cyberspace, the information domain, or in space itself. And they are not bound by geographical borders or national solutions. And our national solutions are often insufficient to address them effectively. In my work, I engage with defense organizations from across the world. And while the importance of cross-regional cooperation may sound self-evident, it still requires a genuine shift in mindset. We must be willing not only to bridge geographical distance, as we are doing at this moment with our ship here in the region, but we also have to bridge our cultural differences. And that requires deepening our understanding of one and another's perspective, our experiences, our history, our strategic concerns, so we understand each other way better than we are doing at this moment. And when we bridge both geographical and cultural distances, we can build lasting trust and meaningful partnerships, which will make sure that we are safe and secure. And from there, we can deepen cooperation in research and innovation and technology, exchange knowledge and best practices, and make sure that technology that arises like AI is not being misused, but is being used in our own safety and security. That is why we work together in this region. And that is why we look forward to further strengthening defense cooperation with partners across Asia or other parts of the world. And we share the same security interests and the same commitment to protect our free and open way of life as we have done in the past in Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, General, and thank you to all of our speakers. I thought there was some really excellent contributions there and a lot of food for thought. So we're now going to move to the Q&A section. Just a reminder that if you haven't inserted your card into the slot, yeah, please do so, and press the button to ask a question. I've got some questions coming in here, and I'll begin, or I should say, if we could answer the questions in the order of the panel, and after a couple of times in that direction, we'll maybe switch it the other way to try and alleviate the pressure a bit. But we'll begin with Ankit Panda from the US.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate the thoughtful presentations. My question is for Major General Meng. Thank you for sharing the proposal from China on a no first use arrangement. I work on nuclear strategy, and I think there's quite a few debates in that world about what promotes stability. But I think many of us agree that instability is promoted when states fear that their nuclear arsenals might be preemptively attacked. And so no first use, from that perspective, might contribute to a reduced risk of nuclear war. But my question is fundamentally about the changing technological environment in which nuclear states exist today, where not only like during the Cold War, nuclear weapons threaten the nuclear forces of other countries, but increasingly non-nuclear and conventional capabilities can also threaten nuclear forces. And so, in this sense, a no first use arrangement, while it might have had value in a different technological context, might have less value today from a strategic stability preservation perspective. I'm wondering if the Major General can share the Chinese perspective on the role of non-nuclear capabilities and their implications for strategic stability between nuclear armed states. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankit. A couple of questions before we request answers. So I'm going to go now to Antoine Levesque from IISS.
Thank you. I have 2 + 2 questions. I'll be quick. First of all, to General Norman. So thank you very much for your thoughts. I'm addressing you here as the commander of the Army Rocket Force, which was stood up last year in Pakistan. In 2020, General Khalid Kidwai from Pakistan chose the IISS to elaborate on Pakistan's doctrine of quid pro quo plus. Earlier this month, on the 14th of May, he is reported to have talked about a quid pro quo plus option for Pakistan. In the position you are in as commander of the Army Rocket Force, could I ask you if you conceive of that rocket force as being particularly usable in the context of it being strictly a conventional rocket force? If so, are you confident, is Pakistan confident, that it can retain escalation dominance while restraining the most uncontrolled dynamics which are part of the fog of war? Secondly, to Major General Meng, sir, could I ask you in the context of Ankit Panda's question, whether you reckon that India-China relations benefit from sufficient strategic stability? And finally, to all panelists, 2 questions. Do you believe that strategic stability can be in any way reinforced by enhanced mutual vulnerability between countries, be it in the strategic nuclear domain, but also strategic non-nuclear domain? And finally, also to the panelists, what are your thoughts about the role and the feasibility of back channels as means to enforce greater strategic stability? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antoine. I think we'll take one more question before we move to answer this first round. And I'm going to go to Farlina Syed from Malaysia.
Thank you so much for the session. I actually have a question for Major General Meng, Ms. Mirjana, and also Lieutenant General Zakaria, especially on AI. So technology such as AI is used to enhance decision, but something that was said yesterday during the RSO launch is that sometimes slowness is actually a part of keeping stability. What do you anticipate is the impact of AI in making a lot of decisions shorter? Do you anticipate that loss of life will be higher with the incorporation of AI in military systems? And do you think strategic trust will also not be possible under this system? And specifically, I think to Lieutenant General Zakaria, because you actually also raised that decision-making times will actually be shorter. Are risks from shorter timelines and potential escalation enough to reconsider including AI in systems that enhances decision-making? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've got some really interesting questions there. Can we begin with you, Madam President? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm starting with the last question on AI impact. AI influences everything we do. We are active in 90 situations of armed conflict and violence. Loss of life is higher. Destruction levels are higher. communication is more difficult. And coordination, security coordination for us and for civilians is more difficult. Because today, we cannot rely on the checkpoint negotiations. We don't know where the trigger is pulled. It could be thousands of kilometers away. So while there are potentials of AI for protecting civilians, what we see at the moment is only the negative side. And that has to be contained. Mutual vulnerability. Where weapons are produced, weapons end up being used. The massive flow of weapons, the massive production of weapons, and the massive investments in defense will eventually create human loss and material loss. That's why we have to factor in that side of war from the beginning, from day one, as we budget for defense. It will visualize what war means, and it will visualize how much you will need to recover from war. So vulnerability is not an asset for me. What we need is political courage, political strength, and a stubborn reliance on the basic rules that all states have ratified to prevent massive vulnerability in the long term. Role and feasibility of back channels. It's important. We are a back channel. The hostage release in Gaza that led to the ceasefire, that was back channeling for 2 years. We are very discreet, we are very silent, very confidential. And these operations are highly complex. We need military expertise, explosives expertise, medical expertise, all sorts of expertise. That is neutral intermediary work in action, and that can save lives in the long term. And you need to support actors and institutions that have the capacity to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take on the question of feasibility as well as the role of back channels, just to agree that it is very effective, and partly I say this because this is also part of my job description, but I think it's also important to note that there are various reasons why back channel work is important, at least in the government context. You have to have the entire establishment behind you if you are to be an effective, if you're going to do work, good work as a back channeler. Otherwise it doesn't work, because there's always a temptation or is a danger that you have a person who's doing back channel work, but in the end that doesn't result in a coordinated response effectively in real terms from the bureaucracy in general. So it's one thing, so the back channeler has to do two things. One is get his agreement from the person with whom he's interfacing, as well as from within important players within the bureaucracy itself. So that's how it usually works. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Major General Meng, would you like to answer some of the questions posed? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions. I think I received the most number of questions. I will answer the later question first by Malaysia friends, and about AI and the decision making in the war. How much it will affect the war, to what extent will the war risk increase. To be candid, the military application of the AI is of great concern. As we know, the AI developed exponentially, has exceeding the expectation of the scientific circle. Look back at the history. No matter what major scientific invention has been created, it will bring impacts on two aspects. On one hand, it will be empower humanity. On the other hand, will bring disaster as well. So I remember the father of atomic bomb, the Manhattan Plan's leader, Oppenheimer, after the atomic bomb exploded, we made a remark. I like demon bring disaster to the world. Then they use take this moment as Oppenheimer's moment. A great invention in science, on one hand, will bring welfare to humanity. On the other hand, may bring great disaster. Since the last 1940s, after nuclear weapon invention, it's such a consequence. The reason why I raise this example is I'd like to say that today the AI, it lead the fourth revolution on the science and technology and bring tremendous changes on people's life in all aspects. The impact is not only a single domain, but it's a kind of ecology. In the future, the human society cannot live without the AI ecology. So in my speech just then, I have put forward that we should pay special attention to the AI's impact on the war. We say the impact on the war. In recent years, the local warfares, it has profoundly reflected its impact. If the Russia-Ukraine war conflicts have initiated such a start, it's just taking shape, while the U.S., Israel, and Iran conflict has reflected the AI's military applications more dangerous aspects. Use all kinds of big model in decision making. In the past, we say the AI has a supportive role in the war, but this time, as I remember, in the first day strike on Iran, the U.S. Through the AI system, select more than 1,000 targets. As I remember, in the history of war, it's the first time rely on the AI. From one aspect, it accelerates the effectiveness, but on the other hand, it may let the war go to uncontrolled direction. So what shall we do? China has put forward many initiatives. In many international occasions, we put forward systematic way of governance. In 2021, China has the UN the Certain Conventional Weapons Convention. We have hand our position white paper from the strategic security, military policy, laws, technological security, research and development, risk control, and military policy, laws and moral and international cooperation. We put forward a systematic view from 8 aspects. Last year, the first conference of UN, China's delegation stress again such a position. I think ultimately such a problem should be solved from the ideal, especially the major countries' ideology. Ideology decide the policy, policy decide the action. For example, the UN's AI advocate AI applications should take people first and to take AI toward good, but also toward security. We stress that the weapon system's decision-making should be firmly on the hands of people. We oppose the use of the AI that is not controlled, the lethal weapon system not controlled by human. Such a position, among all the Asian powers, China has the clearest stance on this position. This answer to Malaysian friends. And the U.S. friend has also put a very professional question. Under this new situation, the non-nuclear weapons also has an impact on the current war. To be candid, China's stance on nuclear issue is consistent and clear. As you know, put it in simple words, it includes several aspects. First, we adhere the peaceful development path, independent and defensive nuclear policy. October 16, 1965, the first atomic bomb exploded in China. We promised the no first use of nuclear weapon by China. Our goal is clear. ultimately, we will comprehensively and eliminate all the nuclear weapon. Finally, the policy is consistent for the past 5 decades. We promise that under no circumstances we will not. We won't use the nuclear weapon to the non-nuclear weapon-free zone. This policy also is consistent. This is what we are making efforts in the past decades. Among the 5 Ps, we hope that the 5 Ps will also sign such a treaty, the no first use of nuclear weapon. If we can do so, we can reduce the risk and the role of nuclear weapon in national security. So we can further enhance strategic stability. I think this also answers the question about the keynote speech. So let's go back to the U.S. friend question, that is non-nuclear weapon role. It also has a great influence on the modern warfare, but it involves many technical details. To be frank, I'm not a technical expert. I'm a study strategy, including AI, the non-nuclear weapons influence. I studied from the strategic level. So on these issues, I wish all the experts in this field, on one hand, not only the technology experts, also the strategic experts, we study them together. We can find the path out. So the non-nuclear weapon issue will not increase the risk of the nuclear war. So this is my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Major General. We can move on now to the Lieutenant General's answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me first thank Major General Meng for tackling the AI question asked by our Malaysian friend there at the strategic and policy level very aptly, so I will attempt it at the operational level as a practitioner. The problem that the AI systems bring on the battlefield at the operational level actually create the vulnerabilities where the risk suddenly vertically jumps to the strategic level. And how does that happen? We all understand the OODA loop, the famous OODA loop. So AI-driven systems shortcut the OODA loop, and that creates that gap and vulnerability in the cause and effect. The effect it creates by getting into the OODA loop compresses the time so much that an adversary will not be able to evaluate the situation comprehensively and give a measured counter move to that move, for want of, I'm not getting into military jargon here, I'm trying to. So, and therefore that creates that proverbial fog which my friend here talks about. And most of the times people will react irrationally, and the responses will be extreme, and which actually will break the entire facade of the rules of war around which we have been trained to fight or prevent the wars. And that's the biggest vulnerability of the AI as I see it. So at the operational level, this becomes very, very dangerous specter for me to be contending with a force where most of the decisions are AI-based. So my calculus gets burdened pretty soon, pretty heavily. Thank you very much. Hope that takes care of that part. Now I come to some heavy lifting here. The rocket force. And before I answer your question directly, sir, let me set a context for the audience sitting here. Pakistan and India, we find ourselves in a neighborhood which is very unique, and we all understand that. We are two nuclear-armed rival nations. There have been nuclear-armed rivals, and the nuclear theory has been expounded starting from 50s till kingdom come, very deliberately. But this is a special case where the reaction times are not in minutes, they are in seconds. So that's very special to South Asia, and that's particular only to South Asia. We have seen since the so-called Operation Prabhakaram, Indians trying to create the notion of, again, so-called space for war under the nuclear overhang, because they thought that in all-out war, it will be difficult to achieve their political objectives, politico-military objectives also, and military objectives also. So the quest of finding that space for war brought Indian strategic thinking, where non-contact warfare was thought to be the panacea for the problem, the solution for the space for war. And I'll share a very interesting thing with you. The mission that my army has, given by the government of Pakistan, I'll share the first two words of that mission. And they say, deter war. The primary mission of the Pakistan military is to deter war. And should it happen, then we'll do what we have done always. And we did it last May 25, last year, for everybody to watch. Rocket Force
火箭军的目的呢，在5月份就已经表明了，也就是填充这个，也就是要
of our neighbors, the Indians. And what it does also is it raises the escalation ladder, so the rungs are suppressed. The decision making, again, with or without AI, is compressed, because we are talking about what I said in my preamble, two nuclear-armed rival neighbors. So when they are rocket flying in the air with such short flying times, and in absence of any formal crisis management mechanisms between the two countries, unfortunately, the international community is the one that gets worried. Obviously, between our two countries, the dynamic plays as it does play. Your specific question was, so this was basically the preamble in which, the context in which the rocket force has been created. It is a strictly conventional force. It has got nothing to do with the strategic nuclear forces of the Pakistan. It has a separate command and control structure. It has a separate authorization chain, which is completely distinct and different from the nuclear forces. So that distinction should be absolutely clear to establish the context again. The escalation dominance part, that is a very interesting question. The more you study such kind of dynamic, one principle that comes to the fore distinctively is survivability. For Pakistan to ensure that it retains escalation dominance in such a conflict, in non-contact warfare, survivability is all we need. And after a couple of rounds, as we saw last time, in May 2025, the ladders of escalation were really compressed in time. And the international community was really running after Indians. Actually, the Indians went to the international community in this case. That aside, so this is the dynamic how it plays. So in the end, the result is, and the Indians raised these forces quite early. Their rocket divisions were raised way back, decades back. They made it part of their conventional army as a declared force. And Pakistan had been staying its hand not to do that because of the peculiar environment of South Asia, and we all know that. So we think that is and other unfortunate attempt by our neighbors to vitiate the strategic stability paradigm of South Asia, which we feel has been checkmated. It's a stillborn baby because of what Pakistan has done. So this is basically just a quiver in the arsenal of deterrent stability in South Asia and ensures conventional deterrence. Hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you. General?
Yeah, I will try to keep it short so you can do another round. AI, huge risk in escalation. I think that's clear. Specifically, if you put it in the ODA loop, like my partner says, it will spark immediately to a higher level in the ladder, which will be difficult to destabilize. So that's a complete risk. We got RE-AIM, responsible use of artificial intelligence within the military domain. It will help if all our nations will join effort there and make sure that we got those in place. But I'm not naive. It will be used in the domain. It is already being used. If I'm in Ukraine and see how the command posts work on the tactical or just below operational level, they will not survive on the battlefield if they do not use AI. Because AI anticipates on the first move or the second move of the Russian Federation, and they can anticipate on that and make sure that their units are ready or prepared, or the Russians are already being destroyed before they make the move. But it is almost dangerous to see how they do it. On that level, I can accept how we use it, but if you do it in the ODA loop, as we discussed, we will get into problems.
Big problem.
So we have to come up with solutions there. The second, back channels, definitely, even on our military side, if we have that back channel open, we can get rid of any miscommunication and at least get an idea about what the other part of the world thinks or does. Also, that counts for the Americans. We can discuss on the military level very well about what their intentions are, what their next move could be. It helps us. But it should be trustworthy. It only works if there is trust on that back channel. So it should be of people who know each other for a long time, or it should be a back channel that is being used. Otherwise, it's not going to help us further. I will leave it to that.
Thank you very much. So we'll take another round of questions now. We'll go to Laura Laser from Austria. Oh.
But I'm here as the International Secretary General of Médecins Sans Frontières, so I'm a colleague of Ms. Boljaric, and this is also what I want to pick up on as well. Because what Ms. Boljaric just said is unfortunately a reality that we in our teams in so many countries that we're working in today see every day. This May, 10 years ago, there was a UN Security Council resolution 2286 on protection of the medical mission after the US bombed one of our hospitals in Afghanistan. There was a big outcry, there was an investigation. What has happened since, though, is not a reduction of these cases, but to the contrary. There is an increasing attack on hospitals, an increasing number of attacks on clinics. Last year alone, it was over 1,300 attacks on healthcare during war. 80% of these attacks are being done by state actors. This is the reality that people, civilians, face on the ground, and it's the reality that humanitarian organizations such as ours face on the ground as well. It means that when I talk to colleagues such as in Darfur last year, they're afraid to go to work. They're afraid to go to the hospitals to help, usually with very little because there are no supplies and there's hardly anything left, to try and save the lives of innocent people, first and foremost. And it's this that I'm passing back to you as the panel to reflect on how can we ensure that this minimum, the minimum standards, international humanitarian law can be respected And I'm not only talking about in actions of warfare, but also by ensuring less impunity when watching other states doing this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we go to Olivia Siong now from Singapore?
Thank you. I'm Olivia from CNE. I have a question for Major General Meng. You gave your response to the American Defense Chief's speech this morning. I'd also like to ask you about the part where Secretary Hegseth said that US-China relations are better than they have been in many years, but he also spoke of what he called, quote, rightful alarm over China's military buildup in the region and asked allies to up their defense spending. Also, a short while ago, we saw the US, Britain, and Australia announce that they are working together to develop unmanned undersea vehicles as part of the AUKUS Defense Pact. Do you believe that is consistent with the goal of building a constructive relationship of strategic stability on the security front? What actions specifically would China like to see from the US, and what is China prepared to do to strengthen this strategic stability that the two top leaders have agreed on? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we go to Qian Xiao from China?
Sorry, my question was the Madam President of ICRC, and we noticed that UN Security Council has just had an open debate on the protection of civilians in armed conflict, and also ICRC, together with China and a few other countries, launched the initiative to galvanize the firm commitment to international humanitarian law, and also following up our colleague from these Doctors Without Borders. In your view, what has made protection of civilians in armed conflict so difficult right now? We should at least offer some minimum level of assurances, right? My second question was the Dutch Defense Minister. In terms of the responsible use of AI in military domain, you mentioned that Netherlands has done a lot in this area, and we also applauded for Netherlands' contribution. So, but it seems as if there's a very slow progress in this regard. So my question is, what is the biggest obstacles in making progress in this area? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let's go to Asarios Mean now. Your microphone is on.
Hello. Thank you, Chair. Inspired by the theme managing threats to strategic stability, it's hard for me not to think about the domestic affair that have shaped the foreign policy, and especially for major power that make these public opinion in the era of AI to become the destabilizing force into strategic instability that we are facing right now. Therefore, since we are currently trying to congratulate the meetup between the two powerful states recently, I would like to know from the panel, how do you think that the two powerful states can work together to prevent the coordination of disinformation campaign that hopefully can stop the radicalized public opinion that make the destabilizing force for reactive foreign policy that can cause a major conflicts in the future? Thank you.
And we'll go to Christopher Buckley now.
Thank you. I have a question for Major General Meng as well. In his comments, he emphasized the importance of the understanding that President Trump and President Xi reached on strategic stability between their two countries. I wonder on that context, does he believe that on the basis of this understanding of strategic stability, US policy toward Taiwan will change? Does Major General Meng see any signs of that change in US policy toward Taiwan, particularly on arms sales? And in that context, what does he make of President Trump's comments about Taiwan in the wake of the summit with Xi Jinping? Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go to Tricia Yeo now from Malaysia. I think it's because I'm turning them on and everyone is turning them off.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Daniel. I have a comment first and then a question after. My comment is a reflection on the interventions made by both President of ICRC as well as General Meng. The reflection is that her comments and emphasis on the values of humanitarianism, I believe, directly actually contradict what the US Defense Secretary Hex's call to increase militarization in the world today. So that's just a reflection point, and we do know that the world is going through that trend. The reflection on General Meng's comment on how he believes, if I interpret this correctly, multilateralism is also increasingly becoming more difficult. And this brings me to my own reflection from today thus far, and I hope this is possible because I believe purpose of dialogue is to provide a perspective from our region, specifically from my country. The point of view from many of citizens in some of the countries in this region is that indeed there's an inconsistent application of the rule of law. There's so much being said about international rules-based order. Many actually view that these rules are interpreted arbitrarily and unilaterally. And this makes pushing for any further adherence to rules-based order extremely difficult. If many comments and interventions throughout today, as I've heard, talked about how the closure of the Straits of Hormuz restricted the freedom of navigation, very few mentioned what actually started the Iran war in the first place, much less the violence that has been perpetrated in Gaza, which the president of ICRC has made mention of. So that's my reflection. Based on this reflection, my question follows up actually on the comments made by the panel today about the use of AI and autonomous nuclear systems that are increasingly being used today. So number one, are there actual efforts being made to have tech governance and AI governance over these systems? Is there a rule that's attempted to be made across countries actually using them? How is it possible? My second question is probably more difficult to answer. How is it possible to create such a rule around AI governance over nuclear weapons when the main AI players are in fact tech companies that have favorable conditions from their country of origin? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we've had so many good questions and a lot of rich discussion. We are now into the last 15 minutes. So I'm going to ask each of the panelists to respond in about 3 minutes each, okay? And I will have to cut you off, unfortunately, if we go beyond that. But I wanted to gather as many questions as possible because we have so many from the floor. So could we start with Madam President?
Thank you. I'll start with the question, how can we ensure minimal standards are respected? I said at the end of my introduction, make international humanitarian law implementation a political priority. And then it will be better. The problem are double standards. All states should recognize that their own security will increase if double standards are not the norm as they are today, and they should recognize that their own security will increase if they return to a protective and not a dismissive interpretation of international humanitarian law. Fact is that we see war crimes, and yet when we conduct the dialogue with the respective entities, they will tell us it's in compliance with the law. The question is how you interpret the law and how you design your military strategies. That alignment between the law, how you interpret it, and how you design your military and defense strategies is essential in how much loss and how much cost you create in the event of conflict. Now, the initiative is precisely addressing that was mentioned. It was launched with China, France, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Brazil, and South Africa in the September 2024 General Assembly. In that preceding General Assembly Security Council meeting, I said, call your allies. The effective implementation starts when you call your allies and tell them to return to a restrictive interpretation of the law, and you work with your allies, not your enemies. What we need is a critical mass of countries that will say, we want a protective interpretation of the law. Now, this initiative by now has 110 countries adhering to it, and we have conducted hundreds of consultations about what states see as the necessary interpretation of international humanitarian law, and we've done that in 7 chapters. Naval warfare, new tech, protection of medical installations, and protection of civilian infrastructure. National implementation of the law, the relevance for implementing the law and preventing wars, and the relationship between IHL and peace, because traditionally the first steps towards a ceasefire agreement happen within the framework of international humanitarian law and with humanitarian steps. So that's not destroying this framework enables you to return to a ceasefire. Now, 150 states have participated, and the overwhelming majority wants the law to have the de-escalating potential. The majority of states don't want to get drawn into conflicts, and this is what we build on. The 3 powers, China, Russia, and the US, are particularly important. They hold a lot of military might, so their responsibility to de-escalate and ensure minimal standards is much higher, because they can influence much more whether a de-escalation happens. But there are 24 other states that have an influence on current situations, and they also have to activate in favor of de-escalation. I'm just returning from Iran, Iraq, and Jordan. Any further escalation from a humanitarian perspective, but also economic perspective, risks getting out of control. And this is why we have to emphasize negotiations, and that requires leadership. Now, Jordan will host on behalf of the SIX an international conference on 7 December. It will be hosted by the King of Jordan. This conference has one objective. It's to link the practical steps that the military undertakes with the political leadership. What we need is alignment between the top political layers and the military leadership, that minimal standards have to be respected and integrated into military strategies. I hope that this conference will be a success, but I also want to emphasize that the US is still our largest funder by far, and the frequency of discussions around compliance with international humanitarian law at all levels is highest with the United States, and we discuss our reports on their conduct of hostilities with them on a regular basis. And this is what counts. It's the constant engagement around these questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director General, your 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. On the issue of AI and how it relates to nuclear technology and nuclear weapons, etc., I can only make a very dramatic appeal, and it is not anything new, which is to go back to the other half of the nuclear equation, not just non-proliferation, but complete and comprehensive disarmament. Nobody seems to be talking about it now, but this was certainly part of a very realistic equation. You get rid of nuclear weapons, and therefore you don't need to worry about the use of AI in these horrible weapons. But that doesn't seem to be the case right now. So that's the first point. Second point is on AI. It's again a very strange situation where we can do what we are supposed to do, but we are not doing it. There was a time, if you remember, when everywhere in the world you would have different types of systems for mobile phones. You go to Japan, it doesn't work. You go to the US, it doesn't work. So we had to have 3 sets of mobile phones, frankly. But we're not, in the end, through the International Telecommunications Union, you did have one common standard, and therefore we can now use one phone everywhere in the world. But human beings are very stupid that way. We should be coming together to talk about common standards for artificial intelligence in all of its forms, in terms of its users, in terms of its production, so on and so forth, but we're not. So this can only happen if the cost of inaction is higher than the alternative. So hopefully this day will come sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Major General Mang, you received many questions, and there's not much time left on the clock, so I'd appreciate if you could answer 1 or 2 as well as you can. Thank you.
好，我严格控。
I will control the time within 3 minutes. Answer 2 questions. The first is the U.S.-China strategic stability, and also today's Hex's speech to strengthen the alliance, and also Taiwan question. I will answer them together. I will stress on 3 points. First, the Taiwan separatist forces and the Taiwan Strait peace cannot accommodate with each other. If we want to safeguard the peace of the Taiwan Strait, we should oppose the Taiwan separate forces. This is our red line. There is no space for reconciliation. Second, Asia Pacific is a region of peace and development, but and not a place for major power game playing. So we stress the cooperation between countries should not target at the third party or harm the interest of a third party, and not damaging the regional peace and the stability. The third point, China and the U.S. relations, stable development is accommodate with both countries' interests as well as the expectation of the international community. So we are willing to make joint efforts with the U.S. to consolidate the common consensus of the 2 heads of state, strengthen cooperation and the dialogue, and handle the disparities well, and promote the bilateral relations toward a stable, healthy, and sustainable direction. That is my answer.
Very much for keeping it so concise. And I'll pass now to the Lieutenant General.
On AI, very pertinent questions, and we are all rightfully worried about the issue. Till the time there is not a collective decision on the larger question of AI and its usages in various aspects that concerns across the human want, the human spectrum, I think it'll be very difficult to bring in a uniform AI governance. And we all hope and pray it comes earlier than later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Even more concise. And on to our final speaker. Your 3 minutes.
The bar is set high now. Yeah, at least well, I got 2 minutes actually, so that's more than 1 you. There's 1 minute more. But anyway, why doesn't it work? Well, it works, re-aim, but why doesn't it go fast enough? I think more nations should be involved, because now you see there is some fear with nations that are involved, that they restrict themselves too much by getting regulations on AI. So that's one. The second one is that, to be honest, AI goes faster than how we can think about the usage of AI. So we need to increase the frequency of having these meetings with each other to come up with solutions faster than AI actually develops. So that's on that question. And then on the other question about humanitarian law, yeah, we have to be more vocal about it. All nations have to be more vocal about it when we see that it happens. We have to address it continuously. We don't do that anymore, or at least not more than enough, not good enough. So, and I'm not naive that will be the direct solution. We are educated in how we can use it. So we can also tell our politicians, hey, now you have to act. And I think if we don't do that, this will only go worse in the near future. So those were my 2 minutes. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, General, and thank you all for joining us for this special session. I think we had so many questions and so much interest. It's a really good sign, and the quality of the discussion has been really high, so thank you all for the questions. And I think the only thing left to do is to thank our panel in the usual way. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.